Something that has become quite natural in the workplace is microaggressions. As defined by Dr. Daryl Wingsu, who popularized the term microaggression in 2010, a microaggression is an insult or an attitude, intentional or not, which sends denigrating messages to certain individuals on the sole basis of their belonging to a marginalized group. A person's identity that could be the target of microaggressions includes race, ethnicity, age, gender, sexual orientation. The term was coined in 1970, but research on microaggressions became prevalent later in the 21st century. A couple of reviews in the last decade have come to the conclusion that it is difficult to determine whether microaggressions have a negative impact on our health, as studies have mainly relied on self-report and by samples who are not representative of any particular group. Some researchers consider microaggressions to be more damaging than overt insults and belittling because they can make the recipient doubt themselves, which can lead all the way to mental health issues. Studies on workplace microaggressions have found that microaggressions are prevalent in the pre-employment stage, and once hired, it is people of color and women who face microaggressions the most. Qualitative research has shown that supervisors can be a primary source of microaggressions in the workplace, but microaggressions can also be committed by peers and even subordinates. The fact of the matter is that recipients of microaggressions in the workplace may feel angry and frustrated, and when they are continually exposed to microaggressions, their self-esteem may start taking a hit. They may internalize the negative feelings that come with microaggressions, leading to feeling like they don't belong in the workplace, which in itself can lead to feeling like they are not accepted by society. Human resource managers have the necessary training to know when someone is dealing with a microaggression, but the rest of us don't. This is why I wanted to make a video on this, to hopefully, at the very least, talk about what a microaggression is, so that we can either confront it or come up with ways to limit its impact on us. Microaggressions are subtle, and generally the microaggressor means well. They could not even be aware that they have a prejudice. They might even mean it as a compliment. The recipient of the microaggression can therefore sometimes feel like they are being oversensitive, which leads to their dismissing of the entire thing. Often, the microaggressor, if confronted about their microaggression, will defend themselves by saying that it was a joke or a misunderstanding. Here are a few things that we can do to deal with microaggressions in the workplace. Educate ourselves on what microaggressions are. Microaggressions are small and subtle, so very often they are difficult to detect. Nonetheless, we could all the while be feeling their effect on us. Some examples of microaggressions include telling a female employee to wear dresses when we never tell a male employee how to dress, telling someone, "You're actually smart," meaning we are surprised that they are smart. When a white colleague tells a colleague of color, "You're so articulate." When a white person says that to a person of color, sends the subtle message that they don't expect the group that they are a part of to be articulate. All the while, the microaggressor might think that they are paying them a compliment. Telling an older colleague, "You might have a problem with using the new technology." There are three main categories of microaggressions. Microassaults. This is an intentional discrimination against a marginalized group of people. For example, racial epithets, discouraging interracial interactions, or mocking a group's cultural norms are all microassaults. Microinsults. A microinsult unintentionally discriminates against a group of people, but considers the person involved in the event as an exception. In this case, the microaggressor thinks that they are actually paying a compliment to that person. And microinvalidations. Microinvalidations dismiss the experiences of a marginalized group of people. For example, saying, "I don't see color," invalidates the entire experience of people of color. One important component of a microaggression is the context in which it happens. As an extension of the microaggressor's intent, body language and what else is happening at the time influences the event and whether we see it as a microaggression or not. Recognize our own biases and prejudices. Being unaware of our biases is not an excuse for any kind of harmful behavior, including microaggressions. We should try to notice the biases that we might have picked up unintentionally against those who are different from us. From one point of view, we should admit to ourselves that it is only natural that different people experience life differently. So because of that, we might have not even the slightest idea that there are a few biases that reside in us. What matters is that we recognize that we have these biases and work on getting rid of them. Doing this reduces the chance that we commit microaggressions. If it happens, because it can happen, and it probably has happened already, that we commit a microaggression and a colleague calls us out on it, what we should not do in this case is get defensive or dismissive. Instead, we should listen to what our colleague has to say and empathize with their feeling and their experience. Then we should acknowledge the impact that our comment or action has had, apologize, and more importantly, use the experience to learn from it and make the necessary changes in our biases. If we're on the receiving end of a microaggression, should we respond? When microaggressions happen in places we are not regularly a part of, we can choose to simply walk away. Because at the end of the day, we are not responsible for educating other people. In the workplace, though, it's different. We cannot simply decide to not work with a colleague, even though they might be committing microaggressions. At the same time, the impact that microaggressions at work can have on us is paramount, because we spend a substantial amount of our time at work. When it comes to microaggressions, it is the recipient themselves that identify an incident as a microaggression. Each individual person has a different set of events that they see as microaggressions, because, well, we all have had different experiences and potential discrimination throughout our life. The harm that microaggressions can cause is twofold. The individual recipient, when the person interprets an incident as a microaggression, they feel hurt. But even when they don't interpret an incident as a microaggression, because they don't know what a microaggression is, or because they are made to believe that they are being overly sensitive, there is a chance that they internalize the incident without even knowing it. And this is way more harmful than realizing that they are the recipient of a microaggression. And then the recipient's community and society as a whole. To decide whether we should respond to microaggression events, we should acknowledge the potential harm that they could cause us. If we can brush it off, then we might just as well not respond to it. If our community is very important to us, we might decide to bring it up, even though it does not have a great impact on us directly. In this video, I am hoping that I can reach those who could internalize the harm that microaggressions could be causing them without them even knowing. Being able to recognize the events that we consider as microaggressions is the first step towards limiting their negative impact on us. At this point, we could have the power of deciding the degree of influence that we allow for each microaggression to have on us, and for some events that are really hurtful for us, then we might decide to respond. And for others, we might decide to either ignore them or learn to ignore them. Other people might consider us oversensitive if we decide to bring up an incident as a microaggression, but we should base our decision to whether bring up something or not only on us, where we show that we care about the microaggressor because we still care, regardless of whether we believe that their intent is benevolent or malicious, is in the way we respond. So, how to respond to microaggressions? Dr. Daryl Wingsu introduced the idea of micro-interventions as potential solutions to acts of microaggression. One micro-intervention strategy is make the invisible visible. This strategy includes telling the microaggressor that they have said or done something offensive. One very simple thing that we can do is name the microaggression. If, for example, the other person said something racist, then we can just say, that is a racist comment. Another way to make the microaggression visible is to undermine its bias. For example, not all Asians are good in math. Or challenge it. For example, I know plenty of other women who have graduated with a STEM degree. My favorite piece is asking them to repeat or explain their statement or action. For example, saying, I'm sorry, could you please repeat what you just said? This very often makes the microaggressor reconsider what they just said or did. The second strategy is disarm the microaggression. We can let the microaggressor know that we disagree with what they said or did. We can interrupt what they are saying and redirect the conversation. We can suggest to take a break if the situation becomes heated, or we can state the rules. We don't tolerate those kind of comments in our company. Strategy number 3, educate the microaggressor. We can talk privately with the microaggressor and let them know of how their comment or action made us feel. We can make the differentiation between the intent behind their comment or action and their impact. Especially in the case of unintentional microaggressions, people can be oblivious about the impact that their words or actions can have, sometimes because they lack the cultural knowledge, and other times because they are not aware of their own biases. And strategy number 4, seek outside support. Apart from regularly feeding our well-being, we could engage other parties in the microaggression event. We could speak to a supervisor. We could talk to HR. We could also report the incident to other instances. Alright guys, this is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you find this video helpful, and I will see you in the next one.